Welcome to Sound Faith, where the mission is to glorify God by building the fields of Christian philosophy, theology, and apologetics. I'm Tyson James, the president of Sound Faith Consulting. Today we have a special show addressing the bloody situation in Iran, where millions of people are calling for the overthrow of the Islamic regime. And it's been reported that over 10,000 people have been killed in attempts to quell the uprising. So there are a lot of conversations going on about Iran today and this revolutionary movement. These conversations are happening all over the world, and I thought it was best to interview an actual Iranian who can give firsthand knowledge of what it was like growing up there, how it's changed, especially with the rise of the Islamic regime, and what's really going on the ground. So it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Farid Resi. Farid,
Hi.
brother, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, especially on short notice. I think I sent you the invitation like a week ago yesterday, so thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Love your background. So tell me a little bit about that background there. So that's the flag of Iran, but not currently, correct?
Yes, that's the flag Iran had before the revolution, with the lion and the sun symbols in the middle. After the Islamic Revolution, they removed that and they put the word Allah in the middle of the white section.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the protesters, flying this pre-Islamic regime flag, and I think one of the huge metallic symbols was taken down by some people who, hijacked a crane or something. Is kind of crazy. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's very important that we hear from people actually from Iran. You are from Iran, born and raised there, but you're no longer living there, right? So very fascinating story. So tell us a little bit about your early life. What was it like growing up in Iran? And you're obviously also a brother in Christ, so a Christian. So that's very unusual. So tell us a little bit about that early life and growing up there.
And so I was, when people are born in Iran, they are automatically considered a Muslim, unless you belong to Armenian families who have migrated from Armenia, and we also have a small group of Assyrians. The rest of the nation, if you are born into an Iranian family, you are a Muslim. And right from a very early age, you have to start learning about Islam and Quran and things like that. So even from elementary school, I remember having those classes. And in fact, I was doing so well, my parents actually signed me up for extracurriculum Islamic teachings that I went for. I even went for like a competition for that. And my knowledge of Christianity was limited to what my Muslim teachers were telling me. Jesus is only a man, not a prophet, not God. He did not die on the cross, and Bible has been corrupted. Those are the only thing I knew about Christian faith. And one additional thing I would say is generally, if you look at the majority of Muslims around the world, they are Sunni Muslims. In Iran is one of maybe one or two countries that have majority Shiite Muslims. I won't go into the difference, but I would say because it has, there is part of that that has a huge impact on my life was the Shiite Muslim believe in 12 imams following Muhammad who were in charge of the society or something like a government type of thing as a religious leader. And the first imam was Muhammad's cousin. The second and third were his sons, which would be Muhammad's grandsons, because Ali married Muhammad's daughter. And so Shiite Muslim believe that the third imam, Hussein, he was in a battle in Iraq. He had like 72 followers. The enemy had thousands. The war lasted 10 days. And at the end of those 10 days, everyone on the side of Imam was killed. So every year around that time, for 10 days, Shiite Muslims wear black. They go down to the streets and they start having this procession of going around the neighborhood. And they have these huge chains. It has a handle, so they have that chain and they hit themselves on the back of their shoulders to show mourning or sorrow that that imam was martyred. And I was doing that from, I don't know, like 6, 7 years old, like any other boy, I would go for that. And I remember I used to intentionally hit myself hard. So when I got home, it was bruised. And I was very happy. I said, God is happy with me because I suffered for the sake of that imam.
Mm. Wow, that's very interesting. So, like the practice of self-flagellation was, it's still, is it? You said it's still practiced today, and
Yep.
very wow.
Yep.
It reminds me of the Da Vinci Code. There's the the member of Opus Dei, and you just got that self-flagellation scene.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So you grew up there. You were trained in Islam from an early age, and you were advanced in your studies. You went for some. You were gifted and talented in that regard. So then you progressed in your youth, and then I believe you said before that you studied at the University of Tehran. Is that correct?
Yes, that was my master's degree. I did both bachelor's and master's in English literature.
In English literature.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what made the decision to study English literature, and how was that taught at the university? Was there a slant to it, or was it pretty straightforward?
In Iran, English is one of the subjects all throughout secondary and high school when I was studying. And after like 7, 8 years of having that as a subject, if you talk to someone in English in Iran, they wouldn't be able to make one single sentence because they only teach you grammar, translation, vocabulary, and like reading. So if you see Iranians who are able to speak English fluently, they must have gone to these private language centers, which is other than your normal education. And the same thing was true of me. I was 10 years old and my parents signed me up for an English class. And this was a private language center. And I remember the first 2 years, they just allowed me to do that during summer. But because they told me we don't want you to interfere with other subjects. But when they saw how interested I was, they allowed me after those 2 years to continue throughout the year. And I went until almost the end of high school. I was going through that language center. And I remember last time when I was there, one of my teachers who was actually had studied English in university, he brought us together, some of us who were around the time to go to university. And he said, I want to explain to you, if you want to study English in university, there are these different fields. So it would be literature, translation, and teaching. And he said, well, if it is teaching, these are the things you will learn. Translation is like that. And literature, you would be reading novels, poems, plays like that. And I was like, this is something I love doing, because since childhood, I have been an avid reader. My mother also loves to read. And so I kind of have learned that, I guess, or inherited that from my mother. And so when I heard about what studying English literature will involve, I was like, this is something I want to do. So that's how I ended up doing both my bachelor's and master's in English literature.
Yeah, that's really great. So I was an Arabic linguist in the Air Force. My wife was a Farsi linguist in the Air Force. And, you know, when you just look at the scripts, they look very similar. They both use the Arabic script, but completely different languages, I discovered. And the only phrase, so I helped my wife kind of learn the how to read the script a little bit when she was first going through her Farsi classes. And but the only phrase I remember is "Man der Las Vegas zindagi mikonam," and so
I live in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, so fascinating languages. So it looks the same, but it's completely different, right? And you've learned both, right? Growing up, learning, being taught Islam,
Yep.
You have to know Arabic, right? Because the idea is you can't legitimately know Islam and its teachings unless you read the Quran in Arabic, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. And I also have to add that although the letters may look similar, but even when it comes to alphabet, they are different. There are 4 consonants in Persian that don't exist in Arabic. So the letters seem similar, but even pronouncing those letters would be different between Persian and Arabic.
Yeah. Good stuff. So talking a little bit about your faith, how is it that in a country that's reported to be, you know, over 96% Muslim, you are a Christian? How did that happen?
Well, as I mentioned, I didn't know anything about Christianity except what my Muslim teacher taught me. And in Iran, the only thing our television showed about Christianity was Christmas Eve. They would show this cartoon called The Mickey's Christmas, which is based on Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. But they wouldn't even show the whole thing. They would just have a 10-minute version of that. They would cut out the dancing and the singing part. And after showing that cartoon, they would say, "Merry Christmas to Christian living in Iran." That was it. No other program about what Christianity is about. And until I was in high school, and up to this day, I don't know why. At that point, Iran had 2 major newspapers. My mother would go and buy one of those 2 every day, and she and I would be reading that. Near Christmas, when I'm in high school, one of that Iranian newspaper published, surprisingly, Sermon on the Mount. I remember that was half a page, and the introductory section said, since we are approaching the birthday of the prophet Isa, which is how they call Jesus, and we decided to publish what is known as one of the greatest sermons ever preached. It is called Sermon on the Mount, and it is taken from Gospel of Matthew and Luke. I read that half a page, and that was the first passage of the Bible that I came across with. And it had such a huge impact on me. At that point, if someone had asked me, Farshid, what is special about this thing that you read? And I told them, I wouldn't be able to tell them why. But now in hindsight, I think that passage had such a huge impact on me. There were 3 reasons. First one was the idea of when Jesus talks about the 10 commandments and takes them to a deeper level. saying like, it was written, you shall not commit adultery. I tell you, you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. Or, it was written, you shall not murder, but if you're angry at your brother, you are also justly condemned. So Jesus is saying, it is not just what we do, it is not just a physical act, it's what goes on here and here, which are also important. Second thing was the issue of hypocrisy. When Muslims pray, during the prayer, they kneel and they put their forehead on the floor, but they don't do it directly. There is something round. They put it on the ground and they put their forehead on that. And I knew there were some people who would intentionally press that on their forehead. So next day at work, people would look at them and say, this is such a holy man. He must have prayed for such a long time. It left a mark on his forehead. And Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount is saying the exact opposite. If you want to pray, go do it in private. The God who sees in secret will reward you. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. When you fast, put oil on your head so people won't know that you are fasting. And it is like completely different worldview. But the third one, which I would say the most important one, was that as a Muslim, I was told, this is a list of things you should do. This is a list of things you shouldn't do. And what I'm about to say, many Christians actually don't know. If you tick all the boxes of everything you've done and everything that you shouldn't have done, you haven't done them, and God shows you mercy, you will go to heaven. I don't think any human being can read Sermon on the Mount and say, yeah, I can do that. No one is able to do that. So that was the main effect it had on me. I didn't become a Christian, but I kind of stopped being a Muslim. And I remember I cut that half a page, and that was the only Bible I had for so many years.
And then, so that was the only, you weren't a Christian at that point, but you weren't a Muslim. You were kind of in between exploring and wrestling with these things. Yeah. So I guess go ahead and give us a short, account of your testimonial, and then we'll kind of move on to the current political stuff.
Sure. When I did my bachelor's and master's in English literature, I remember one of my professors told us, if you want to study English literature, there are two things that you should know really well. One is Greek mythology, and the other one is the Bible, because there are so many allusions to them. And so I didn't have the physical Bible, but I read a lot of novels and poems and plays that had allusion to Bible. I remember when I was doing my master's, our lecturer gave us this article on John Milton's Paradise Lost. It had one paragraph inside that said, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve rejected God. For God to be just, humanity should be punished. For God to be merciful, humanity should not be punished. The only way for God to be just and merciful at the same time is that he pays the price in his son. When I read that, and it was just like something clicked in my head, and I was like, this makes sense. Christianity is true. And so I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I want to buy a cross and put it around my neck. And my mother was like, no way. If your dad finds out, he's going to be very angry. So eventually I convinced her. So when my father was leaving home to go to work, I would bring this out. When he was coming back home, I'll put it in. I had to hide it from my family, my friends, my neighbors, my colleagues, and I started leading a double life. I had a lecturer in university. She had the US green card. So she would have spent 6 months in US, 6 months in Iran. And one time when she was leaving Iran, I told her, when you are coming back from the US, can you bring me a Bible? And she did that, and that's how I got hold of my first physical Bible. I went to one of my lecturers, and she's an Armenian. She is now in the US. I asked her, I want to become a Christian. What should I do? She said, Farid, you have the Bible. Go and read it in the privacy of your home. And you will be, if you don't do that and you come out and say, I want to become a Christian, you put yourself and your family at risk. This is the only Christian in my life, and she was this discouraging. One day I decided to go to a church. This is the biggest church in Tehran, and it is an Orthodox church for Armenians. So one day I just wanted to walk in, and the security guard stopped me and said, "You cannot go in." Because there's a small group of them, he looked at my face and he knew I wasn't one of the regulars. I said, "Is there any chance you can let me in?" And he said, "Only after the service is over." So I went and walked around the church. Eventually, I went to the church and he let me in. And I went and sat on one of the pews. And immediately, this woman started walking toward me. And she said, "What is this book you're having?" And I said, "It's an English Bible." She said, "I'm very sorry, only Bibles in the Persian language are allowed." And I was like, in my head was like, why is she saying that? But I picked up my Bible and I went out, and that was my only experience of church in Iran. Later, when I left Iran, I found out that there were a couple of churches in Iran that they were offering services in Persian, my language, but the police went to them and they said, "If you don't stop these two services, we close down the whole church." And that was why that lady was very worried about that. I was never part of a Bible study. I was never part of a church. I was never part of a Christian group. And as I mentioned, the only Christian I knew was my lecturer, who discouraged me from pursuing that. So throughout those years in Iran, it was just me, my Bible, and God sustaining me through that whole time. And to just give you one example of how my life had changed was the very same procession that had this idea of chains and hitting yourself. I would join that every single year, and I would do that whole thing again. But when I read Sermon on the Mount, and as I continued to know and read more about the Bible, I could not even stand looking at it. So if the procession was going my way, I would go and change my route and go another way. And you know, they sing these mourning songs to show that they have this sorrow. I could not even stand listening to them. So I remember when I was home, I would just put earphones around my ear, not to hear that. And I now realize God showed me that I didn't need to bruise myself to please him. He is pleased with me because Christ was bruised for my transgression. And that completely had changed my whole worldview and way of thinking. And in Tehran, there is a street which has about 6 or 7 shops. The shopkeepers are Armenian. So during Christmas time, they would sell Christmas tree, Christmas decoration. I remember for Christmas, I would go there and I would just walk up and down the street looking at those shop windows. I would get a donut and a cup of coffee, and I celebrated Christmas on my own. It was a very lonely journey, but I'm just thankful to God that he sustained me throughout that whole time. Living a double life eventually became too stressful. I couldn't do that anymore, so I left my job. I was a university lecturer for about 5 years. And I left my job and my family, and I went to Malaysia, where I became a refugee. I lived there for 12 years as a refugee there from 2010 to 2022. And I remember Malaysia was the first time I actually managed to attend a church service for the first time. And I cannot tell you how it felt. It was surreal, the freedom and the joy of being able to finally practice my faith. And I remember, I think it was the second Christmas in Malaysia that I attended 4 different church services. And next day, my friends were asking me, "Farshid, how come everywhere we go, we see you?" And I said, "Do you know how many Christmases I missed back in Iran?" So I was making up for that. And again, it's just a story of God's grace. This is not my story. It is the story of how God worked in my life.
Amen. Well, The reason I wanted to get so much, and we spent, quite a bit of time hearing your backstory. This is integral, I think, to understanding what the aim is for us as Christians around the world in getting involved in this conversation about Iran. We are interested in what's going on there, number one, because there are people being killed um, in mass. This is a horrific massacre that's happening among the protesters there. So that it's, they're people made in the image of God, and we love them and we want peace there. But also because there are so many Muslims there who are enchained in the darkness of Islam, we want to bring them to the light of Christ. We want to see disciples made there. And so I think hearing your background really gives us some insight into what can make a difference there, what can really affect the hearts of Iranians. And so I want us to hear that from you and learn what it may take to impact people there so that they can find true freedom in the gospel of Jesus Christ. So thank you for sharing that.
So I would say that despite if you look at a statistic and they talk about like how many people in Iran are Muslims, that statistic is very, very off the real numbers. And the reason for that is that, and I will mention that it is a sad thing that has happened, is that in school, they tell students that each religion is better than the previous one, and the leader of that religion is better than the previous one. So we were told that you have Judaism and Moses, then you have Christianity and Jesus, and then you have Islam and Muhammad. And they told us that Islam is the perfect religion and Muhammad is the perfect example of a human. When Iranians go through their lives and they eventually become disillusioned with Islam, their thinking becomes, if Islam is the perfect religion and it turned out to be horrible like this, why should I even bother look at the less perfect religions? And because of that, there is a massive movement from Islam to atheism, especially among the young people. They just reject the whole thing and they say, we don't even believe that God exists because of how we see Islam in action. And so there is this massive movement going there, and that kind of makes it difficult to bring about the gospel and Christianity. Even my own family members, I have family members who right now are just nominal Muslim. On the application form for something, they will write Islam, but they have they don't want nothing to do with Islam or even even the word religion. I have my family members, I want to tell them about Christ. And before I could go on, my family member looks at me and says, Farshid, I know what you believe, but I don't want to hear anything about the word religion or God. And when I tell her, just because you had a bad experience with Islam doesn't mean the same thing can be applied to others. We should be open about that. And they are not. And so that is a sad thing that has happened in the sense of like moving toward atheism. But in terms of how we as Christians can do that, of course, we all want to share the gospel with them. And I want to use every opportunity we have that we are given to bring this wonderful message of the gospel with them, because ultimately we know the ultimate problem is not like the government and politics. Because they don't change the heart. Governments can come and go, people's heart don't change. And it is only Christ who can change people's heart. So what can we do? Of course, we continue to pray. Of course, we will continue to think about them and think of the situation they are going in, and we want to reach out to them and we want to help them. But I want to also say this. Praying for the salvation of people is a noble thing, and we should do that. But it should never replace the actual sharing of the gospel with them. Because prayer, just looking at prayer doesn't change people. Gospel changes people. Of course, God can use our prayers to bring about change, but the testimony of the scripture is that people are converted by faithful preaching of the gospel. Now, in Iran, completely different from where I was there, internet became very easily accessible. At my time, it wasn't. There is so much Christian material available online and also on some satellite channels. But again, the sad part of that is a lot of that is prosperity gospel, false teaching. So it's difficult to know what is right and what is wrong. But in terms of information, there is so much available that wasn't there at my time. So one thing I will say is that even the few Iranians or Muslims that are in our circle, regardless of where we are living, reaching out to them, sharing the gospel with them, being loving toward them, all will ultimately, if it brings about a change of life in them, that will have some ripple effects and go to their families and friends. Because when you come and find the truth of Christianity, you become so burning with fire that you want everyone else to know what you know. And so that is something that will eventually come out. And I have to say the sad point is right now it's almost 2 weeks that Iran doesn't have internet. It's a nationwide internet shutdown. And basically, Iranian people do not have any way of communicating with the outside world. And it is unimaginable. Those who are listening now, I just want them to imagine 2 days, not 2 weeks, 2 days. They don't have any access to internet. You cannot book an Uber. You cannot do any shopping online. You cannot have any staff meeting. Every single thing that comes to you normally will be gone. And these are the things we take for granted. So I want you to feel how Iranian people are feeling, having lost complete access to the world that is outside of them. And the government using that very strategy to murder its citizens. The last number I read was above 14,000 people have been killed during this protest. It will continue to do that, thinking the outside world will not know what is going on because our people don't have any access to internet. So because of that, the government continues to have the bloodshed it has done for 47 years.
Mm. Yeah, well, getting into that, you see articles and news that Elon Musk has tried to provide some free Starlink over there, but I've heard from people that it's only like an hour a day that it's even available. Not much access at all, and you still have family there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously you're worried for them. You want to be able to communicate with them. You've not been able to communicate with them regularly, so I'm sure that's very troubling for you.
So last time they had this same internet shutdown, I managed to find a Iranian company in California, that you could buy packages from them. Like I think it was like $30. I could talk for a little more than 3 hours with that. And I managed to talk to my mom and my family back there. But this time, when I informed Iranians here in the US that they can call their family through this, they called the company, and the company said, this time, even we are not able to contact Iran. So I can say all Iranians outside Iran, majority of them have no way of knowing how their families are doing. And of course, they are very anxious. The last couple of days, it has become possible on a very limited time for people in Iran to directly call their family outside of Iran. But it's for a very short time. I have heard from multiple sources that there would be tapped in, and so government will listen to what is going on. And as you mentioned, Starlink is very limited. They may use just 1 hour a day. But even then, it's because government is jamming the signals. And there are very few people who actually have that access to a Starlink. And by using a Starlink, they are also putting themselves at risk. Because if the government finds out there is any outlet, of course, they will be arrested and face dire consequences as well.
Yeah. let's back up a little bit. So we're in this situation right now because for a lot of reasons, but there is an uprising, a movement to get new leadership in. People are unhappy with the Islamic Republic or the Islamic regime. But how did that come about? Like, when you read the history, it looks like, under the Shah, the previous Shah, there was some efforts to modernize and there was a little bit of success, but also some setbacks. And so there was this referendum, and, reports are that 93% or 98% of people supported the shift to an Islamic Republic. So why was there so much support for that shift? And how have things changed since the Islamic regime taken over?
So I was born a couple of years after the revolution, but I have listened to so many people talking about how the situation was before the revolution and how it has changed. I can tell you and this is again a very sad thing that has happened. After revolution, almost everything about Iran has gone downhill. Whether you look at with the economy, the culture, government, everything has gone downhill. Like even like relationship with foreign countries. So just to give the people who are listening an idea of what I mean about this massive shift, one example is economy, and one aspect of that is, of course, the currency exchange rate. In 1979, that's the year when the revolution took over, $1 was equal to 7 of our currency. So 1979, $1 to 7 of our currency. Now, after 47 years, $1 is equal to 145,000 of our currency. $1 to 145,000 of Iranian currency. From 7 to 145,000 over 47 years. Iran at the time of Shah, the king, had very good relationship with the Western countries. The economy was doing really well in a general sense. But after the revolution took over, Iran's relationship with the Western countries almost was kind of like disconnected. When the university students, they stormed the American embassy and took the people there for hostage for 444 days. After that, when they were released, there was no more connection, any relationship between Iran and the US. Similar thing happened with many Western countries. Because of the Iranian government, because of their rhetoric, because of the threatening that they do, they have been sanctions imposed on them by many European countries and also by the US. And I will come to that part in a bit because that's very important. But even in terms of Iranian passport, at the time of the Shah, Iranians could use the Iranian passport to travel to so many countries in Europe and all that without requiring a visa. Now it's down to just very few countries that Iranians can travel to without requiring a visa. And the way Islamic Revolution worked, there are so many factors that I may not have the time to unpack, but I can tell you one thing. It was through the use of religion. It was through the use of reaching out to the majority of people and give them these false hopes about your electricity will be free, your water will be free. You do not need to pay for that. And of course, the religion card, that played a very big role in that these people were told, look, king is just oppressing you, many of you are poor, and then for you to get all these privileges for free, we need to just gather together and go against the Shah and topple down the regime. And the whole thing caused like a hysterical reaction to what Khomeini, the supreme leader at that time, was bringing up. And So what happened was you had this, and I have to acknowledge it is important to tell the truth, even if it is uncomfortable at the same time, is that there were people in Iran who were experiencing poverty and they did not have access to certain things. But compared to the time right now, honestly, that was like nothing. It is just this whole movement that began. And again, like one example I can give you of that is whoever has read Animal Farm, the novel by George Orwell, if you read that, it is like every single step is based on how that novel tells us how revolutions happen. It was continuous brainwash. It was coming up with this, as I mentioned, false hopes about things are going to be, all will look well, and the king is trying to take the religion away from you. They don't want you to be able to practice your faith and things like that. And that eventually led to the revolution that continued on. I have talked to a lot of people who had voted in the election that you mentioned. They're 98% voted for Islamic Republic. When I have talked to them and I said, what got into you that you voted yes? You know what the response is? They say we had no idea what Islamic Republic would be. It's just we trusted that supreme leader, the charismatic figure. He was a charismatic figure. He could rally so many people behind him. They had no idea what the word Islamic Republic would mean. They just went and joined an election as people who had zero knowledge of what they were voting for. Now, when I ask them, they are almost all are regretting, not just that vote, but the entire revolution. It had just caused this massive negative impact on the Iran and Iranian people afterward. And whatever we see right now is nothing new. These things have started right from the very beginning of the revolution. Khomeini had said and had promised that after the revolution is going to be successful, he and other clergymen would return to mosques and do what they have always done. They promised not to be involved in any way with the government. But we know how it all turned out. Right from the very beginning, these are some of the things that Iranian people have had to endure for 47 years. Immediately after revolution, they started these mass executions. Anyone who was in any way connected to the regime of, connected to the government at the time of the Shah was brutally executed. Many of them, most of them, without any trial. Since then, this execution of the people who go against the government has continued up to the few years that we have been living right now. And even now, they were going to execute so many of the protesters who have been arrested. And as I mentioned, that's a pattern that has happened for such a long time. Just in the last maybe 15 years, you see how Iranian regime has suppressed any protest that has been going on, as I mentioned, from the very beginning of revolution up to now. So many university students were killed when security forces stormed on the university campus site, in the dorms, killing a lot of students just to suppress the little protest that was happening at that time. Some years back, the price of fuel just went up overnight. And that wasn't just one thing. So many other things, factors came together, and people came to the street protesting about that. Government killed 1,500 people in a very short span of time. And internet shutdown was happening at the same time as well. At the time of just some years ago, there was this 20-plus-year-old young Iranian girl, Mahsa Amini. She was from another town. She had gone to Tehran just to visit some relatives and all that. She was arrested by the moral police because some of her hair was visible. Now, when something like that happens, they throw the young women inside a car, a van, and they take them to these correction centers when they will call their family and say, your daughter has been arrested. Her attire wasn't Islamic enough. Her hair was visible. You need to bring appropriate clothing, and then we will let you take your daughter back to you. Mahsa Amini, when she got there, she just collapsed. And clearly, she had no medical condition. Everyone knew that she had been definitely beaten, and that resulted in her death. Government denied that, and they said, we haven't done this, we have not done anything wrong. So how did that turn out? A lot of people, especially young generation, came to the streets calling out for justice and protesting against how women in Iran were treated at that point. And these protests ended up so many young people, so many, at very young age, they were all killed on the street because government was trying to prove they had not killed Mahsa Amini. So many young people lost their lives. So many very small children lost their lives. One boy that everyone got to hear about died when he was like 9-10 years old, Tian Pirfalak. And all these massive number of people being killed, it continued. And it was this continuous bloodshed until the government came to a point of, they thought they were able to suppress that whole protest. But again, that is not the only thing. It keeps happening in a cycle. So the people who are listening to me now, I want you to hear this very carefully. The problem with Iranian government is not what you see right now. It is not just limited to this time. Iranian people have been subjected to 47 years of bloodshed, oppression, hard economy, not being able to lead a decent life. Many people who would be considered middle class in Iran are now kind of under the poverty line. The economy has collapsed. I talk to my mother. My mother says, I go to a shop, I buy a can of yogurt for a certain amount. Next day, when she goes to the supermarket, the same thing, same brand has doubled in price. Iranian people, many of them are not even able to afford eating meat, chicken, fish, rice. We have this saying in Persian of having bread and cheese. That is considered like the food that a poor family will be able to afford. People are not able even to afford that. Economy has gone downhill as well. And one thing that I would say you are seeing on the news is a small miniature of what is actually happening in Iran. What you see on the news is not the whole thing. You just get a fraction of that because you need to remember there is no internet. People cannot tell people, Iranians and other people outside Iran, what they are actually going through. They are going through something that I would call a new Holocaust. Mm-hmm. I have read about Second World War. I heard that the Nazi Germany killed 12,000 people per day. Iranian government, over just 2 days, killed 12,000 of their own nation. Please don't let Iran become a new Holocaust.
Yeah, it seems like you're calling for, intervention, some international support. So that was going to kind of be my next direction here is, in your opinion, it does seem like it would be better for Iran if the Islamic regime was overthrown. Obviously, you've seen the deterioration of the country over the years when you lived there, and you've heard the stories from the people that came before you that, once the Islamic regime took over, things just went completely haywire. When you were describing that, I couldn't help but immediately in my mind picture what's going on in our own country in New York City, where you've got the Muslim Zoran Mamdani, who is a socialist promising a bunch of free stuff to a bunch of people. He is a Muslim with Muslim ideals, and suddenly you've got these leftist, liberals voting him into the mayoral office in New York City, and they have absolutely no idea what Islam is or what it brings or what will happen when somebody who proclaims socialist principles and all this free stuff actually gets into power. And that's exactly what I see and what I hear, the parallel there in Iran from what you're saying.
In terms of what other countries can do about this, let me mention a few things about Islam. If you look at the Muslim majority countries all around the world, you will see that the government is fully pro-Islam. Islam on its own can never survive unless there is a government backing it. If there is no government backing, how do you expect to impose those Sharia law on people within that country? So because of that, Islam and government have always been connected and attached to each other. While people in the West talk about the separation between church and state, that is non-existent in Islam. Islam and the state and the government are completely intertwined because, as I mentioned, it won't survive without government backing it. And because of that, one of the things that the Iranian government has been in place for such a long time is definitely because the implications of having this Islam as the official religion forced on people who did not accept Islam voluntarily, but the Islam was imposed on them as well, killing thousands of Iranian people at that time when the Islamic army came and imposed Islam. So because they are intertwined, to go against the supreme leader of Iran, you have gone against God. Because they believe that the supreme leader is directly appointed by God as his representative on the earth. And within that context in Iran. So if you go against Khamenei, the current supreme leader, you have gone against God's appointed leader, which is basically God going against God himself. In terms of what you said about New York, what I can tell you is I won't talk about the communist aspect part of that, but I want to talk about the Islamic part of that. And Islam has always a long-standing agenda for getting over the control of the government. Think about what is going on in Europe. Think about what is going in some places in America even. Muslims immigrate in huge numbers to European countries and also, as I mentioned, different parts of the US. They will go there and they will take over the population because they have way more children than what other normal, non-Muslim citizens of that country have. Within 20 years, or maybe even longer, Muslim families will be a majority. Muslim families will have like 4 or 5 kids compared to families who have no child or at best 1 or 2. In 20-25 years time, Muslim will have the majority population of different cities. Because they are now in majority, they can vote Muslim leaders into key positions in the government. And when you have Muslims in the government, it becomes very easy to then impose Islamic laws on the population. This is something that I would call on the Western countries to wake up. They have closed their eyes and they don't see this as a threat. But there will come a time when they will also face what Iranian people are facing in their own countries. These majority Muslim people who want to impose their views on every single citizen, regardless of their religious or national background. So what I can tell you is this, when it comes to what other countries can do to help Iran. Please don't think that Iranian people are protesting only because of economy, or it is only because of women head covering, or because any of these things that I have mentioned in in our today's meeting. Yes, all of them are reasons why Iranian people have become angry, fed up, poor, and all those things. But please don't take this wrong. The reason why Iranian people are protesting is not just about to improve the economy, is not just to give women more freedom. They want this regime gone. They want this whole thing ended. They are tired of having this Islam imposing themselves on them, their children, their grandchildren, their education. Every single aspect of their life have been impacted by Islam. And I don't know how many people would watch this video, but I want to encourage you to share this video as many times as you can. I hope someone from the American government, I hope it will come to President Trump. I hope it comes to the European Union leaders. I want to say this in as clearly as I can. If the protest that you see at this time in Iran comes to an end, if the government Iran continues to exist after this protest, that will be the end. The government will continue massacring his population way more than what it actually has happened until now. Right now, it is 14,600 killed, 330,000 injured and wounded. That number will pale in comparison with what will happen if Iranian government survives this time. So I want to ask President Trump, I want to ask any leader of the European countries, I want to ask them, this is what Iranian people are asking you to do. Don't just go on a microphone and say we condemn the attacks. Condemning the attacks don't get rid of them. It is good that you are condemning it, but condemning alone has no effect on a country where the government itself has no limit of how many people from their own people can kill. And let me make a comparison. On 7th of October, Hamas, a terrorist group, attacked Israel, killing innocent men, women, and children to the number of 1,200 people. All people in the US and in Europe, they all condemned the attack, and they rightly condemned it. That was brutal, that was inhumane. But I want to ask President Trump, and I want to ask the European leaders to hear this. The very government that made that attack possible, the Iranian government, they got some assets of Iran that were frozen. Biden released them. Few days after that, Hamas attacked Israel. The same government behind those attacks is Iran. You were condemning 1,200 innocent deaths. The government behind that attack has killed more than 40,000 people of their own country. If you want the problem that exists in the Middle East, if you want to stop terrorist activities, if you want to stop all these attacks on American forces, if you want to bring an end to all these terrorist attacks happening all around the world, there is only one option. Come to the rescue of the Iranian people, not with empty words, but with all your mighty military power. Iranian people don't have weapons to defend themselves. They face a brutal regime, a brutal security forces who will shoot at them directly. They don't shoot in the air so people will run away. They shoot directly at them. And let me tell you a couple of things you may not have read on the news. Iranian security forces murder Iranian young, especially many of them young people. They put those bodies, the dead bodies of them, in a body bag. They put it in the back of a truck. They take it to a specific location far from where people are. The families of those people that they cannot find their loved one, they may think maybe they have killed my loved one. They have to go all the way to that location. There are massive number of body bags. They have to go one by one, zip them up, look at the face to see if it is their loved one. They have to do it one by one. Can you imagine what is going on through the mind and the heart of those people with every body bag opening? It could be their loved one, and it doesn't even stop there. When you find the body, they won't let you take the body with you. They will ask for something they call bullet price. Family members have to pay for the bullets that have killed their loved one before they can take their bodies and bury them. And let me tell you, the amount is so high that they have to pay for that bullet. So again, President Trump, European government leaders, this is the last chance of getting rid of Iranian regime once for all. Please come to Iranian people's rescue who have no weapon to defend themselves. I have seen videos of people filming security forces on the back of a car, like a van, and they have military weapons, which I think should be used only in a war. And they are using that against Iranian people. Before it is too late, before there is another Holocaust, please come to the Iranian people's rescue. I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm speaking on behalf of 92 million people who have been taken hostage in their own country by a government who has no limits and who is willing to go to any extreme just to stay in power. Please come to the Iranian people's rescue. President Donald Trump, you had promised that if Iranian government kills any more of its people when they are protesting, you will come to their help. And I have heard from my family members and many people in Iran, many of them go every day to continue to protest because they have heard your promise. They are waiting for you to keep that promise. And I know as an Iranian living in the US that everything you have ever promised, you have done. We are waiting for that promise to be fulfilled as well.
Yeah, just such an impassioned plea. Thank you for that. It is kind of strange to me how slowly the administrations, especially Western administrations, are moving on this, especially for the Trump administration, which seems so prepared to act quickly on so many things. I mean, he's only been in office for a year, and it's like he's been in hyperdrive. You know, every single day there's like 10 new things happening. And, you know, we saw the capture of Nicolas Maduro. It was just like in an instant, and the bombing of, you know, the nuclear facilities in Iran. And it's like now suddenly you've got tens of thousands of people being killed, hundreds of thousands of people wounded, blackouts, communications blackouts, millions of people protesting. They're calling for the overthrow. It just seems like this would be such a no-brainer. But at the same time, it's like, obviously, a lot of us don't have the information about the complexities on the back end. There's a lot of things, a lot of implications for intervention. So, you know, it just from an outside view, though, from people who are just looking from the outside looking in, it just seems like these people are suffering. I mean, we're seeing videos coming out of them being mowed down in the streets. They're having to stay in their homes for fear of being shot the second they step outside. And if I understand you correctly, I had not heard that before, but was it right that you were saying that they are ransoming the bodies of the dead protesters until the families pay for the bullet that killed them?
Yes, that's true. And this is not the first time they are doing this.
So this has happened before in other protests?
Yes.
So this is the technique that they use to get more money from the people even after they've killed their loved ones.
I also have heard reports that they go to a hospital, and when they see these people who are have been wounded during the protest, they just go above their head and put their gun on their forehead and just shoot. So even wounded people in the hospital are not safe from what these security forces are willing to do. And regarding what you just mentioned, I have to say that yes, I don't expect President Trump to come and announce, I'm going to attack Iran tomorrow. That is not what we are expecting. But what we are expecting is for something to be done before it gets too late. I read another report of one person, and I have to say, because of the internet shutdown, it's very difficult to verify every news item that we hear. But one of the things I read, which stuck in my mind, is that there was a person who was in the protest, and the family were very worried. So they went to that location and started looking at their body bags, and they found their son who was alive. And the way they found that he was alive was that he had hidden himself in one of those body bags as if he was already dead. He had been wounded, and he couldn't move that much. So he decided to put himself in one of those body bags and kind of hide, because he knew if they had seen him wounded, they would just come and finish him off. So in that particular example, they were able to see their loved one. But that's just one example among hundreds of thousands, which are not like that. And as I mentioned, there is nothing this government and the security forces wouldn't do. I even heard that they have received the help of some men from Iraq and Lebanon, in like Hezbollah and Islamic group, people like that, to come and help them suppress Iranian people. It is a human tragedy. And I mentioned what I would like the governments to do about it, to do something about it. I also want to ask people around the world. I'm not expecting you to help Iranian people by coming and fighting them, but there is something you can do. Every single day, when you see posts about Iranian protests, please share that on your social media. Let the whole social media be saturated with posts about Iran. This has happened several times before. There was a protest, you have covered it, you shared the news for 1 week, 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, things have moved on to other things, but Iranian people ended up dying over and over. Please don't stop until this government is brought to its end. This is the time that Iranian people really feel there is a possibility of victory, and they see your help as very crucial for that victory. So while I'll ask the governments to employ military help and strike, I would ask the people all over the world, don't let the voice of Iranian people die. Right now, they don't have a voice. You and I should be our voice. When you kindly invited me for this interview, I told my friends, I said, I'm away from Iran. I cannot help Iranian people in many different ways. The only thing I can do is to be their voice. And so I hope I have been their voice, and I hope that this comes, and many people around the world will watch this and realize how horrific the situation in Iran is, and do what they can to help Iranian people.
Yeah. We've seen video from Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the former Shah, and he's telling, regularly encouraging the people of Iran to stay strong, that help is on the way. He's been imploring the leaders of the free world to intervene and to help the people overthrow the Islamic regime. It seems like the people largely want him back as the Shah. So the question, though, is, number one, what does that intervention look like? Right? You're saying it doesn't necessarily need to be boots on the ground, but what exactly would it look like for the U.S. or other leaders to intervene, but not actually having boots on the ground?
Because you mentioned Reza Pahlavi, I need to mention 2 points about him. One is that when you look at countries like Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Syria, you will see, and the other one is Afghanistan. When you see that the America and some European countries attacked those countries because there was a dictator in place, and this dictator, like Bashar Assad, was using chemical weapons on his own people, they intervened and they removed those dictators. But that created a void, and something worse came in its place. So when you have things like ISIS happening, when Gaddafi from Libya was removed, when Saddam Hussein from Iraq was removed, I know it's an irony, but Christians in Iraq and Syria were safe under Bashar Assad and Saddam Hussein. The reason was there were all these conflicting groups of people, and a dictator was the person who could keep all those groups under control. When Saddam left and Bashar Assad left, Christians' life became at risk. But I want to say that that is not something that is going to happen in Iran. Why do I say that? It's because of Reza Pahlavi. In those countries I mentioned, there was no person seen as a good candidate to replace that dictator. This is why the dictator left. Every faction tried to fill that void for power. Not everyone in Iran, not everyone among the Iranian people, whether inside or outside, support Reza Pahlavi. But majority and a very big group of them do. And what I would say is that he has been, up to this point, a very decent person. He's been very honest. He's said something which I really admire. He has said that if Iranian protest is successful, he will be just like an interim leader. He would have another election happening, and then it's the Iranian people who would decide the kind of government they are going to have. And this time it is very different from the one happening at the revolution, where people had no idea what Islamic Republic was going to look like. Iranian people now have access to internet. They see the politics around the world. They see how other countries are being run. They are not going there with their eyes closed. This time, they want to make sure they don't make the same mistake again. So I think Reza Pahlavi has managed to do something which is very important, is that he has united majority of Iranian people around him. Government of other countries have looked at him, have interacted with him, have seen him as a viable option, as a person that they can interact with, unlike the Iranian government. So what I would say is this: if Reza Pahlavi has been and is continuing to be the same person that he has told Iranian people, and what he had promised, which I believe is a very good way forward, that's a good thing. And I think that we should reunite around him, because there is no other person that we can think of. There is no other person that we can think, oh, this is a good representative or a good replacement. Right now, it is just him. So my another suggestion is that the government of other countries, please meet Reza Pahlavi. Please see the plan he has for Iran, and know that Iran won't be another void, be filled with something worse. Iranian people won't allow that to happen. About what you mentioned about having boots on the ground, Iranian security forces, although they are everywhere, there's a limited number of them. In the previous protest, they were not as spread out as this time. Here we have even a smaller towns having people protesting, which means they have to send their people all over the country. Their number is limited. If the US government and European countries do military attacks on military bases on places where these security forces are coming from. That will cause the government in Iran, that will cause the security forces not being able to fight at more than one front. Once they are being paralyzed, Iranian people can continue that protest and bring this to an end with the help of them. So I believe military strikes are needed, they are necessary, and that will help Iranian people to have more time to breathe after these daily attacks and bloodshed. That will give them both the time and the energy to recuperate and continue that protest, to be able to take over government buildings. One of the very important places to be taken over is IRIB, Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting. We don't have in Iran, we don't have cable TV. Every single TV and radio channel are broadcast through IRIB. So they are the propaganda machine of the Iranian government. When people take over that, I'm promising you, the whole view will be different, because then you will hear what is true and what is truly happening in Iran, not what the government wants to show people.
Wasn't the IRIB set on fire in Isfahan? I thought I saw that at some point.
There was one building in Tehran. IRIB is a very big area.
So they have multiple buildings all over the place. Oh,
yeah,
two. Okay.
Only one of them was hit, based on what I remember.
Okay, so it does look like, you know, the people are recognizing the importance of that and taking some action. But so what you're saying is military strikes are necessary in order for this movement to succeed. So it sounds like you wouldn't say that simply arming the protesters would be sufficient. Is that correct?
I don't know how weapons can be brought into Iran and to pass to the people who are actually doing that. Because of that, I would say yes, military action is definitely necessary. Iranian people right now, the only thing they have to defend themselves is a few stones or setting up something on fire so that the security forces won't be able to approach them. That's the only way the only thing they have to be able to stop that. And I have to say this with pride. The courage that Iranian people have shown during these protests and the previous ones, it humbles me. I'm away from here. They face death every single day. They have seen many of their family members and loved ones dead, but they still haven't given up. They still go every day against that government because they know they cannot live under that regime anymore. Everything the government has done has had a huge impact on Iranian people. And when I mention military, let me also mention this. When the US wants to impose sanctions on Iran, they decide to take it through Security Council. What is guaranteed is that China and Russia will say we will veto. We won't let the sanctions come through Security Council. So what happens is the US joins Europe and they impose sanctions on Iran as a united front. Iranian government is not able to do business with companies from those governments. Russia and China always come to Iran's help. They approach the government. They say, look, no country, no company is going to do business with you. Nobody is going to buy your products. Nobody is going to buy your oil. We will do that, but we want things in return. The result of that is Iranian government gets the money they want. Russia and China get what they want. The only people affected by those sanctions become Iranian people. It hasn't impacted the Iranian government at all because Russia and China will always come to help. There are millions of people in Iran who are very sick and they need a specific medication to survive. They cannot get those medications because of the sanctions. Economic sanctions have only affected Iranian people. So the reason why I mentioned that is that I recently heard that a few of these summits, I've forgotten what the title was. They have said they won't let Iran representative to appear before them. Yes, these sanctions may stop one politician from joining other countries, but imposing sanctions now won't help Iranian people.
Mm. So what you're saying is the sanctions are basically a boot on the neck of the people, and it doesn't really hamper the government.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. The killing hasn't stopped, obviously. You know, we saw in the news President Trump addressing some comments and questions about the situation in Iran, and he actually thanked the Iranian government for not executing 800 people that they had planned to execute, as if, you know, that's something that they should be thanked for, which was, I thought was really bizarre. It's like, thanks for doing the bare minimum of not executing people. But yeah, you know, there's so many people calling for intervention. It's just, what does that look like? And like you said, we've got Russia and China who are heavily involved in trade with the Islamic Republic or the Islamic regime.
Yes.
And so there's that complication of, well, you know, is U.S. intervention there going to start something much bigger? And that's a concern as well. But yeah, what you're saying is there absolutely must be intervention to stop the killing, to overthrow Khamenei and help the Iranian people. So that's good to know. Let me just pull up some comments here. We've got some people asking some questions. So Josh Klein asks, when people say that the USA intervening in Iran would be the same as when we intervened in Iraq, how would you respond? And I think you kind of went into that, and maybe you can elaborate just a little bit.
Yes, so I mentioned that unlike those countries, in Iran, there is now a viable option of Reza Pahlavi being seen as someone who can lead the country before the point that people can engage in a free election. So it is not just like removing a dictator. It is. Khamenei is a dictator, maybe one of the worst kinds in human history. But the situation is different in that Iranian people, many of them, as I mentioned, have united around Reza Pahlavi. You didn't have that in Iraq. So when the U.S. government sent the military to engage battle with Iraq, there wasn't a candidate available there that they would say, okay, once we remove Saddam Hussein, this is the person that we can that can replace him. That's why I would say it's a different thing.
Okay. From my buddy AJ Stringfellow, he asks for, do you think that these massacres on Iranian protesters by the Islamic Republic will further destroy the image of Shia Islam among Iranians and open them up more to Christianity?
That's a very good and important question. I would say right now, that image has already been shattered. A lot of people who would be considering themselves as even like pious Muslim, I have had one among my family members. He actually told me, he said, I'm not a Muslim anymore. And the whole view of, I wouldn't even call it just Shia, I would call it the whole image of Islam has been tarnished. Iranian, I don't think even what Muslims will consider the greatest like enemy of Islam could have achieved. That has been achieved by Iranian government. They have in a sense, they've damaged the image of Islam in a way that no other quote unquote enemies of Islam could have ever done. People are just fed up. And now they, as I mentioned, they don't see just religion and a state as separate. They are completely considered together. So they know that to get this government gone, they also have to see that worldview, which makes it possible for those dictators to continue oppressing Iranian people. So yes, that will definitely tarnish that image. But with regards to open up more to Christianity, that is very difficult for me to say. We were talking beforehand that in Iran, although the majority is said to be Muslims, many of them are now nominal Muslims. And I know we have heard about, you must have heard from so many different news that Christianity is growing fast in Iran. I'm not in a position to be able to say that is true or not, but I would say that it is, many of those numbers are a speculation, because other than people who are from Armenia and a group of Assyrians who are, according to Iranian constitution, allowed to practice their faith as Christians, the rest of the Christians are underground because they are converts from Islam. And there isn't really a big network of them connecting each other. So when they come up with the numbers, I wouldn't say that's 100% accurate, but I have heard about movements toward Christian faith among people. That is something that, of course, we all would pray for, and we pray that Christ will come and change people's heart. As I mentioned, governments can come and go. Human heart only can be changed by Christ through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. We're, on this question, I do think a lot of people are going to be where you were when you first started your journey out of Islam. They're going to reject Islam, but kind of be in this limbo where they're not ready to accept anything else. They've been burned by religion. They're suspicious of the institution of religions. And so they want to refrain from being involved in anything else immediately for the fear of getting burned again. And so you've got people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali,
Yes.
who, kind of the same thing. She was part of the New Atheism and palled around with Richard Dawkins and all this. And now, she's a Christian. But for years, she was just kind of right there. Nabil Qureshi, if you read his book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, right? He did the same thing. He was convinced that Islam was false, but not ready to, fully embrace Christianity. There were a lot of cultural and family pressures, right? When you begin to think about apostatizing from Islam, you know that it's going to destroy a lot of your relationships.
Yeah.
So there's so much social pressure to just continue the status quo, right? And I think that's going to be a big pressure for the people in Iran, but there are people who are being outspoken and saying, no, I reject Islam completely. We want nothing to do with it. We've seen the results. And, after seeing so many decades of decline in Iran, I think that's going to further destabilize the reputation of Islam, like you said.
This is like kind of a statistics. They said there are exceptions, but many Muslims become Christians. It takes them about 3 to 7 years. 3-4 years, they come to the point of saying, well, Christianity is true. Then they will spend several years. Is it worth it? Exactly what you mentioned. I'm going to lose my family, my friends, my job, or even my life will be at risk. Is it worth doing that? And one reason I think Christian faith is so important in that region is that if you look at human history, the Middle East has always been a battleground. You have all these countries attacking each other, and you don't see any long period of time with no war in the Middle East. And I always thought of the issue that is happening there. People are brought up in countries with the idea that the people on the other side of the border are your enemies. And your goal in life should be to kill as many people as possible from the other side. And this creates a cycle of violence. I murder your brother, you murder mine. The cycle of violence keeps happening ad infinitum. Unless something happens, the only way that it can end is for one side to look at the other side and say, it is enough, I forgive you. That's the only way that cycle will come to an end. But the only possible scenario where you can show that kind of forgiveness to the other side who has killed many of your loved ones, the only possible way to forgive the other side is that when you yourself have been the recipient of a greater forgiveness. And that only comes through Christ. Unless you realize that the wrong that others have done to you pales in comparison with the wrong you have done against God, only then you will be able to appreciate God's forgiveness and for you to extend that forgiveness to the other side. Ultimately, peace in the Middle East will come when the Prince of Peace rules every heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just bring up this message from Owen Giles. He says, God bless you, Farshid. We love you, brother.
I
Yes,
love you too.
absolutely. I'm just so glad that we know you, that you've been able to give us insight into what's actually happening in Iran from the perspective of somebody who grew up there and became a follower of Christ. Just so incredible. Some of the tragic stuff going on there right now and things that I didn't even know about before talking to you today that I think are going to shock a lot of people. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Again, just thank you so much for joining me on short notice.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, do you have any final message that you want to share with people, anybody who might watch this, and as well as perhaps your family who you've not been able to contact recently?
With regard to my family, I know internet is still not accessible, and I really miss them. And I've been away from them for 15 years now. I saw my mom and sister when I was in Malaysia a few times. Last time was in 2018, so that's 8 years. Rest of my family and friends, I haven't seen them for 15 years. I really miss them. I really love them. I hope if one day they get to watch this video, that at that time when they see the video, I pray that the protests have been victorious and we would be talking to each other under a very different circumstance. I just love you. I really miss you. And I just hope that what I've said today, you will see and hear about that and think Farshid was our voice. So I really look forward to that day. For people who are watching this and just ordinary people around the world, thanks for listening to this podcast. Please take what's going on in Iran seriously. In the long run, what kind of government in Iran will be ruling over people will have implications for the world that you are living in right now. Iranian government, as I mentioned, has not been just taken Iranian people hostage for 47 years. It has been brutal in eliminating anything that goes against it in other countries. I don't know how many of you know this, but something that has been happening quite often recently is that when a terrorist linked with Iranian government is arrested by people outside of Iran, Iran will arrest one citizen from that country and wants to exchange those two people. This happened in Sweden. There was this guy who was very involved in murdering people after the revolution with the executions. And he was being tried in a court and he was sentenced to life. And so he was put in prison in Sweden. Iranian government got a Swedish tourist and arrested him and contacted the Swedish government and said, you give us that Iranian guy, we give you your citizen, which means they exchange a tourist for a terrorist. What Iranian government does will affect your country, doesn't matter which part of the world you are. Please be the voice of Iranian people. Please don't stop sharing news posts about what people in Iran are going through. Please do that. Please be their voice. Remember, they don't have any access to internet. At the time we are living in 21st century, it is ludicrous to imagine that you can have lose your access to internet for 2 weeks because the government doesn't want the people outside to know what they are doing. They are murdering human beings every single day. And I want you to put yourself in their shoes. They are helpless. They are being wounded and killed every single day. and there is no one they can complain to. There's no one they can talk to. I'm trying to be their voice. Please continue to be their voice. From this day onward, even if you haven't done that before, please do that. And my last comment is again to President Trump and the US government and the governments of countries in Europe. Please take the threat of Iran seriously. This protest, this current ongoing thing happening in Iran would be a point of no return. If government of Iran survives this current situation, that would be the end for Iranian people. Millions will be massacred, and the government will continue its dictatorship around Iran. Please come to Iranian people rescue. They are hoping that President Donald Trump would keep his promise and come to the rescue. That will ultimately bring about a complete change to the Iranian people who have gone through that suffering for such a long time. Young people in Iran, they know that if the Iranian government continues to exist, their future will be as bleak as how it has been right now. Please come to the rescue. Please let Iranian people, especially young people, have a future when they themselves can decide what kind of government should rule over them in their country. Please don't forget Iran, and please come to the rescue. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for that, Farshid. As we continue to monitor the situation, I hope to have you back on maybe in a few months in a more positive environment where the circumstances have changed and we've seen some movement. Perhaps the people have actually succeeded by that point. But in any event, we're going to continue praying for you, your family, and the people of Iran that the peace of Christ would eventually come to those people and that the gospel would enter the hearts of the Iranian people ultimately, and also that there would be just peace among them, that the killing would stop. So we look forward to that. And, hopefully the people that are watching, like you said, Farshid, we hope that they will share this video so that everyone can be more informed about what's actually going on in Iran from the perspective of Iranians. So again, thank you so much for all of you who are joining us today. Thank you for watching all of this. And if you enjoy discussions on Christian philosophy, theology, apologetics, and culture, we invite you to support the ministry by sharing this video and subscribing, and also leaving us your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. God bless and Godspeed.